Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video, and today myself and Sloth think we might have the answer to our relegation battle woes, and it could be someone called Maxwel Cornet. So Sloth, we are absolutely in the relegation zone now, 18th place with 11 games or 12 games to play. Getting very tight down there. Southampton next. Every game looks like a must-win at the moment with teams. There's 7 or 8 teams down there, and one person that could potentially play a big role in our kind of survival bid is Maxwel Cornet. Now, we haven't seen much of him because he's been injured for most of the season, but from what we did see in the Europa Conference League early on in the season, there are a few things that we can analyze and break down and kind of look into in a bit more detail as to what he could bring that we don't actually have at the moment in our squad, and why it could be such a big and pivotal role to our relegation survival bid. So what are your thoughts on Cornet before we get into the analysis? Like, when he joined the club, were you happy at that deal going forwards? Do you like the kind of player he is?
I think it was one of those deals where I kind of thought it's a great boost to the squad. For £17 million, it's a pretty good bit of business. It's not an overpayment. He is Prem proven, as we love to hear so many fans say time and time again. But I think there's always been a bit of a question mark over his fitness. And of course, when you're looking at Burnley and the fact that they managed to get near enough a full season out of him, you felt pretty confident with the fact that he would be a safe bet injury-wise. He's past the worst of it. And let's be totally honest, that has completely come back to bite us in the arse. So That's been a real shame. But in terms of what he brings to the squad, he's got pace, versatility, but also application to work hard for the team. And I think that's something that people have been very critical of both our wingers for, particularly myself. But it's something that he's always going to bring to the team, and he's always going to try and beat his man with his pace as well. That is such a huge factor in today's game.
Absolutely. I think what you've mentioned there, pace, versatility, work rate, all of those kind of tie into what we're going to analyze now, from the 3 assists that he has got in 12 appearances for us so far as a West Ham player. Now, he did get the Premier League goal against Chelsea, obviously got disallowed for just absolutely nothing, so we can't really include that. But what we're going to look at is each of the assists that he's got for us in the Conference League. So I want to just start with this one, Sloth. First game against Viborg at home, obviously very early on in the season. What I liked about this was, you can see here, he's at kind of the top of your picture on the right. Cresswell, the ball comes into Cresswell. And what he does in this clip is he's ever so slightly, gradually coming towards Cresswell to create the space in behind him, because he knows, as you mentioned, he has that pace to get in behind. And if you just look within a split second, within 1 second of the frame, he darts into that space that he's created. And he kind of almost draws the defender with him. And then he's got that space to run into to exploit. And Cresswell acknowledges that and plays a very nice ball through. And also, as we move on, he has a bit of composure when he's in the wide areas. We've seen it time and time again from, both our wingers this season, the inconsistency that you were mentioning about. And what Cornet can do is consistently deliver an excellent ball. And you can see here, one kind of key attribute from Cornet that I've noticed is he can use both feet. So what he does here is he comes onto his weaker right foot, disguises the cross, kind of delays it a bit, completely sells the defender for a left-footed cross. And then, you see it here. It's just a perfect delivery onto Scamacca's head. The person that we've been saying, feed Scamacca in this area, he will score you goals. We haven't done that because, Ben Rama's not that kind of player from those wide areas. Scamacca hasn't played enough to be able to see it. And Bowen's delivery, like you mentioned, hasn't been good enough. So this is just a perfect example of kind of what Cornet can do with his pace and with his kind of application and technical ability. I think this was the first thing I wanted to mention from that first assist. Do you kind of understand that? And do you kind of agree with the pace attribute and kind of being both footed and what that could bring in terms of helping us stay up in this relegation battle?
I completely agree. I think one of the things that does hinder us and has been a reason that Souček has been such a lightning rod for fans is because we know that if we have someone in that advanced position in that middle role, then they're going to find the likes of Bowen, they're going to find Ben Rama, and they're going to find the wingers. Sorry, I mean, if we have Ben Rama in that position instead of Souček, you're going to be able to have someone who finds the wide men. They're going to link up with Scamacca in so much more of a dangerous way. And when you have Souček there, who is, as I've said many times, a blunt instrument, he doesn't have that passing range. He doesn't have that ability to just turn and quickly play a ball through. Then it slows us down so much, but it also takes away from the fact that they can make these runs and they can drop deep and turn and create space, but it's irrelevant if you don't have someone who's capable of finding it.
Yeah.
And where I think we've really struggled this season is not having someone who can do that. And unfortunately as well, we've had a manager who doesn't understand the players that he's got, because Paqueta's never really been that sort of player. He can do it at times, but it's not his forte. And unfortunately, we've played him in that position where he's expected to do that kind of thing, and it's not really worked. So I think the two-footedness of Cornet is something that is really going to be valuable for us, because having the ability to deliver wherever you are on the pitch is so important, especially when you have 6 foot plus strikers, or even someone who's as physically capable as Antonio. It does make us a real threat going forward. But I do just worry that it's a case of too little too late, to be honest.
Yeah, there is that worry, isn't there? Because there's only 12 games left for us to play, and also we don't know how fit Cornet is. You know, he's still getting up to match speed. He hasn't really played much Premier League football. I mean, he got 5 minutes the other day against Aston Villa. So this international break could be very key for him, and trying to integrate him and get him up to a bit more of match speed fitness, because he is a very valuable asset. And like you mentioned, he offers that, you know, dynamism from wide areas, and he has that ability to either go on his left, go on his right. And also he will get in behind, and his pace will cause teams problems, which is exactly what we've been missing for the majority of the season, is pace. You know, we haven't had that. So having him on one side and obviously Bowen on the other would be, you know, completely different to what we're used to in terms of, you know, having to rely on that right-hand side for our pace, when it's often been someone like Ben Rama or Fornals on the left. So adds a bit more balanced in wide areas. So let's move on to the kind of second assist that he got for us. As you can see here, again, against Viborg in the return leg. This one was just a goal kick up to Scamacca. Nothing really too dangerous from the build-up, but Scamacca wins the initial header. And what I liked about this was Cornet's anticipation. You know, you can see him kind of come inside, and it kind of differed from the first leg. Cornet was playing kind of as a second striker with Scamacca in this match, with Ben Rama in that number 10 role, like you were just mentioning. So what Scamacca does here, wins the flick really well. Cornet is instantly alert to that. As you can see here, he kind of starts to drift towards where that space is, where the ball's going to come into. And what was so good about this was that technical ability on his weaker foot. You know, it comes into him. He first time volleys it on his right foot over through that gap. And another thing to mention, not just the technical ability to do it, but he does not look at the space around him. You know, this is instinct for him. You know, he's played that first time ball because he's visualized everything around him on the pitch already. And he has that memory of where the space is and where Ben Rama is next to him and what he kind of needs to do to execute it. And yeah, as you can see, ends up in a goal. Ben Rama was just through 1-on-1, had all the time and space to kind of pick his spot. And we took a 2-0 lead at that point. So what I really liked about that was, again, mentioning he can use his right foot if he needs to. He has that technical ability, but he also has the awareness and the vision to just understand when or where to play a pass and how to do it in such a really good fashion. So what did you like about that goal, Slough? Was there anything you picked up from there?
I think your point there about finding the forward is something that's really important. Obviously, he played at Burnley, played a lot of games with, well, I say a lot of games, but he played with Weghorst when he came in.
Yeah. And
finding that link up is a really big part of who he is as an attacker and how he plays. He did so at Lyon as well. When you've got Lyon's historically fast and pacey forwards, players like Dembele, Akanbe, you've got that ability to know that if you play a ball in behind someone, they're going to run onto it. And this is really where Scamacca thrived when he was back at Sassuolo, where you have players like Berardi who knew they could play those passes into him and he would get on the end of him. Doesn't mean it doesn't. I'm not saying Scamacca is really quick. What I'm saying is he will make those runs and he will find the space, and he won't necessarily run channels, but he can link up really well with players around him. And when you have a forward or an attacking player whose first thought isn't necessarily going to beat my man, but I know that someone's going to be more advanced than me, I can quickly try and play it through. That is something that you cannot defend against. You can try and predict where it's going to go, but effectively you're playing against two individuals there, because someone may be marking him, but if there's a flick through, it's irrelevant. You've got to predict the space, where it's going to go and how high it's going to be. And to do that is incredibly hard. So unless they stick to Scamacca like glue, you've got that chance to run off them, and it makes it so much harder for a defender. So that two-footedness as well is where it really comes into play. He could have easily switched it out wide and knocked it down for a winger to run into space, but he's chosen really well. And when you have a attacking player who you know can link up well, but can spin someone as well, and I think what we haven't touched on so far is that he's a very strong player. He's not afraid to outmuscle defenders, and he can use his body strength well, which is what Bowen does. But Benrahma, let's face it, he doesn't really have that physical edge, and it's just that explosive power that is so invaluable to us. And I think this piece of play really showed that he can hold off the defender but link up well.
Yeah, I also think, when we kind of touch on that first time pass over the top, what you mentioned there, he could have easily just brought it down, took a touch. Someone like Antonio would have done that, I feel like. I feel like there's probably only two other players in the squad that would try that first time pass. That's probably Fornals if he's in that position, and Paqueta trying something like that. So it shows that he has that technical ability that perhaps someone like Antonio doesn't have if he's up there with Scamacca. Or I know we haven't seen that much, but in this example, we were playing a back three. It was kind of like a 5-2-1-2 where we had, Benrahma in the hole, and we had Cornet and Scamacca up top next to each other. So there's obviously that element as well where he can play with him. He links up well, like you mentioned, and he has the technical ability to make those passes in behind or get in behind himself. So yeah, let's move on to the last one, which is his third assist for us out of 12 appearances, which not too shabby considering hasn't played that much football. But yeah, this one came against Silkeborg in the away leg. 1-1 at this point. And what this is it's not so much the technical ability. This is more about the work rate and, the determination to get into an area where we need to defend at certain points and, understanding when we need to. So you can kind of see here, the ball goes into the midfielder from the right back. Now, Cornet has two options in this kind of scenario. He can either kind of stand still where he is and kind of think, okay, I'm just going to stand, back to the centre back next to me. And, my midfielders can kind of work with any midfielder that comes into the pocket. But what he does here is as soon as that midfielder receives the ball on the half turn, he instantly switches from that centre back into midfield. So again, that awareness we were mentioning before of what to do. So as you can see here, play develops. There's only really one option that the pass is going to go to, and Cornet sprints back into that area where it's kind of being dropped into. And that is what I really like as well, the defensive work rate that we need to see as well in a West Ham shirt. And Moyes will demand that as well. So what we see here is that, willingness to get back instead of just, like I mentioned before, standing against the centre-back and kind of just letting the midfield take over when, again, he didn't need to do this. But what he does from that is he gets in front of his man, intercepts the pass with really good anticipation, and he doesn't, dwindle on the ball. He doesn't take a few touches, maybe play out wide. He didn't even look up. He just knew Scamacca was there to play a first-time pass. So, and obviously Scamacca scored a really good goal from this outside the box, if you remember. But again, another element to Cornet's game that is a little bit different, but shows how important he could be. And again, this is playing in a striker role. He has such versatility to play anywhere, and that work rate, anticipation, and also the technical abilities to just play that first time pass was really impressive for me in that third assist we just saw.
I think one thing that's really important is that he played a sort of left wing back role a lot at Lyon, where he's going to have to have been more aware of the defensive situations. He would be aware of how some opposition would play, maybe even recognizing defensive patterns, which obviously everyone is coached on, but when you play them yourself, you're probably more aware of. And for him to have that versatility to play left wing back, to play across that left hand side, but also in the middle, it does mean that you have, a few more edges to your game. And his reading of how the opposition pass the ball, but also when to press, is something that is, as you said, going to be so important for us. And the instinctive play through to Scamacca, that is something that if I think, as Mike has said many times on the channel, if you're a manager who relies on moments in games, a player who can latch onto those and create them himself is going to be huge for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from all of this, we'll get into the summary in a minute, but it just shows that he is a different type of player to what we've got, and he has so many different attributes that could be, really useful to what we're going to need for these next couple months, especially not just in our relegation, battle, but also in Europe. We mentioned all these clips; they all came from Europe, so he has that European experience with us now, albeit a few games, but we just need to slowly integrate him, and that is the big question mark, whether he will be up to speed to kind of consistently do this in the Premier League, and if he can kind of stay injury free. But just to summarize the points, there's kind of 5 key areas to what we think Cornet is kind of good at. Obviously, the first one being he will run in behind. Not a lot of our players will do that, so it's nice to have that pace in behind and can get in behind when he needs to. The second one being he has both feet at his disposal. He's not just that one-footed, left-footed player that you normally see with a left-footed kind of style. He can play with his right foot as well, which is pretty unique in a player, and obviously gives him that versatility we were mentioning about. The third one being kind of visual awareness and actually having the execution of it. What we mentioned from the second goal, where he has the awareness to play a pass, but he also has the quality to execute it as well. So that's a really important point. The fourth one being his work rate and his anticipation, as you mentioned. Obviously, he's played left back, left wing back. He's aware defensively and he knows where to be. Even if he's playing striker, he understands what his job is in the team. And I feel like that's going to be really important, especially in a relegation battle. And yeah, number 5, the big one for me is versatility. People will be looking at maybe trying to change things, maybe go 2 up top with Antonio Scamacca, Ings Scamacca. For me, it could be Cornet and Scamacca. We've seen the link up already in Europe from a couple of those clips, and I feel like those two would really complement each other nicely, because Ings doesn't have the pace that Cornet has to play off Scamacca, but Cornet's technical ability is probably better than Ings's as well. So it's just the finishing, the proven, as you mentioned, the proven goal scoring instinct from Ings. But Cornet showed last season, 9 goals at Burnley in 36 games is a really good record, considering he didn't play striker that whole season. He was also playing left wing, probably left back at some point. So yeah, those are the kind of 5 key areas for me for Cornet. Let us know what you think in the comments, whether you agree with this, how excited you are to see Cornet back at West Ham. Sloth, any final thoughts about Cornet and what he could do for us in this relegation battle?
I think one of the things that for me is a real positive is it's not like he's been out injured and unable to work. We've seen quite a lot of posts of him performing extensive rehab exercises and really trying to work on that calf muscle. It's something that I know all football fans want to see. If a player's injured, they want to see him working on it, rehabbing it. But it's something that also means he's probably going to be able to get back into the step of things a bit quicker. And match fitness is it's very hard to train for. You can only get that with minutes on the pitch. However, the closer you are to full fitness, getting back from an injury, the more likely you are to have an impact when you start to come back. And I just think that's a massive positive to us, because I think he's showing that right attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. You know, his injury was, I think it was calf related, wasn't it? So it wasn't like a tear of an ACL or like a really bad injury to try and come back from. Although it's been a long time, it's been a very rare injury, and hopefully it hasn't really impacted him. You know, he looked pretty lively from the minutes he got in both of his last substitute appearances. So it looks like that pace is still there. It looks like that desire is still there to get in behind. So again, that's going to be a massive key for us. But yeah, let's know what you guys think. Could Cornet be the person to save us from relegation? Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And Sloth, one thing left for us to say.
Come on, you
Come on,
irons.
you irons.